How do you know when someone has entered hypnosis? What are the signs to look for? And how can you help a client discover that they're in hypnosis? Welcome to the Art of Therapy, Season 3, Episode 20.
It's so good to be back in our studio again today and to really just explore the art of therapy further.
Yes, I share that.
I think just to have a look at where we left off the last time. So we're really busy with a fascinating topic, and that's called hypnotherapy.
Yes.
And just when we started the previous, not a last episode, but an episode before that, we really started to explore what is hypnotherapy and what is hypnosis. And that we really had a look that hypnosis is that it's a state of mind where our critical faculties bypassed through selective thinking. And it's just a beautiful way to look at that and to actually understand that.
Yes.
And that we looked at that there's so many possibilities of access, of accessing just parts in our minds that we're not in our awareness with that.
Yeah, so much so. You are a very experienced hypnotherapist, and no matter how often one utilizes it, it's still remarkable just how, if we just reflect on the definition and what it is, and how Elman conceptualized hypnosis, as you said, a state of mind in which that critical faculties bypass and the selective thinking established. It's just so elegant, and it enables really rapid induction and moves hypnosis and hypnotherapy in its application really into a meaningful, pragmatic, therapeutic domain where it doesn't require enormous amounts of time. It doesn't require hours and hours. No, someone can just enter the state beautifully and benefit from it.
It's really a beautiful state. And I think that's with our last episode, we actually got to experience a live demonstration of it.
Yes.
Which is really, it's so rare, and to be able to see that and to witness it and to understand it a bit more from with really going for it and taking that step in of to experience it. And it was profound just to see her, just to experience that.
It really was something. Cecilia had been really, she was curious, wanted to know, and had been one could just see the quality of relaxation, a profound relaxation, and how she experienced it. It was really something to see, and to be there working with her and facilitating so that she could experience hypnosis and experience that quality of relaxation. Yeah.
It was amazing to have her there and to be able to do that together.
Yeah. Also, as you note that what we had looked at doing was recording that as a complete live demonstration, so that therapists can see its full utilization, and just how accessible it is, and how comfortable it can be.
So comfortable and so quick to actually to utilize hypnosis.
Yes.
So maybe for today, what we can start to have a look at is just really unpacking the process of hypnosis, and just understanding the process a bit more.
Yes. Perhaps we could just look at, because you were here and observing, and to look at what were some of the observations that could be helpful for therapists and to better understand hypnotherapy.
I think it's very valuable, and just to be able to observe it and to see it. I think one of the things that really stood out for me is just how you really walked beside her with the hypnosis process. And like we know with hypnosis, is people are sometimes a lot wary of it, and it's strange, and it's such a different frame of reference.
Yes.
And I think that's one part of it that you could really see with her, is that it was a new experience for her, and also a bit wary about it,
Yes.
but also how you just very gently walked with her and not moving ahead of her in the hypnosis process.
Yes. I think that's really important, what you've noted, that there was some anxiety, as it is for a number of people, just because of the newness of it. It's unfamiliar, or what they've heard about hypnosis or been told, and it doesn't really, as you and I have spoken about in previous episodes, and when we looked at misconceptions, those misunderstandings, misconceptions don't hold once one has experienced it. But very often someone will go into the hypnosis and there will be some fear or anxiety. And the principle is just really being there with that person and just giving them space and just allowing them to experience hypnosis with some of that uncertainty, and just walking, as it were, besides the client. And that's part of the safety of the process and the comfort.
Really, it's going with them and just meeting them where they're at.
Yes.
And then I think it just showed it so beautifully, is that with that you could actually physically see her just relaxing into it more and more.
Yes, that was really such an important observation, because she actually went into hypnosis very quickly. The real challenge when we're observing hypnosis is seeing it and seeing when it's occurring and how quickly it occurs, and often to the depth. And it wasn't, may not have been evident on camera, but from where I was sitting, it was quite clear. She was giving off the signs beautifully of hypnosis, one of which was the eye flutter. And it was just throughout much of the hypnosis. And that is an immediate indicator of the hypnosis occurring. So what was really something is she was in hypnosis much more quickly than one actually realizes or can see. And then in the hypnosis, she was still working out some of the uncertainty. But that's just how it is. And it's very often someone is in hypnosis. They may not even realize that they're already in hypnosis, and they're just becoming, adjusting. They may even think I'm not in hypnosis, but very often they are.
They are.
And they just have to realize they're in hypnosis. And then there's that wonderful relaxation and increasing, compounding of the relaxation.
It really was, you could literally see different levels of the relaxation that she's gone into.
Yes.
And like you say, it's that she was actually very early on in the process, already in a hypnotic state.
Yeah.
Still working out some of the fears and just working with it. But as she moved with working out the fears, the more she could just experience that relaxation.
Yes, very much. I think something that's important was it relates to Dave Elman and how he considered some of the science of hypnosis. And there are many ways of looking at it, but he drew attention to really 5 key signs. And the first is body warmth. And the second one is eye flutter. And then there's the sometimes the sclera, or the whites of the eyes going pink, or the ingestion of the sclera. Then the eyes becoming watery, the lacrimation of the eyes, and then the eye roll as the eye rolls up and goes upwards. And it was just so clear with Cecilia, her warmth. So there was just the warmth of her hand when I lifted it, the immediate readiness for hypnosis. The eye flutter was there beautifully. The lacrimation at the end when she emerged. There was beautiful lacrimation there, and also during the hypnosis I could see the eye roll.
Okay.
These signs don't all need to be present, but where they are starting to show up, there's hypnosis, and someone's already gone beautifully into the state. So it was evident quite early that she was already in hypnosis, in the state of hypnosis, but was just working out some of the uncertainty.
Yes, yes. And I think when you mention the signs of hypnosis, I think that's so valuable, because when someone is in hypnosis, they don't always really realize that these things are happening.
Yes.
And for someone just observing, if they don't know these signs, then it might not always look like hypnosis.
Yes.
But once you see it and once you know what to look for, it actually becomes very, very apparent then.
Yes. What you've highlighted is so important. And here, I think it's really important just to note part of the development around it. Sometimes difficult to trace it because the lineage of hypnosis, hypnotherapy, there's so many contributions. But I'll just punctuate with Calvin Banyan and Gerald Kein. They wrote a book, Hypnosis and Hypnotherapy, Basic to Advanced Techniques for the Professional. And part of their work highlighted the importance of someone who's in hypnosis doesn't always know that they're in hypnosis and actually needs some experiences in order for them to validate that they're in hypnosis. And I just think that's a really important contribution to the field, because it's one thing to observe as a hypnotherapist and know someone's already in trance and in the state of hypnosis, but it's just as important for the client to themselves be able to recognize and validate they're in hypnosis. And that's a really important distinction. And so in the hypnosis process with Cecilia, although she's already in hypnosis and deep hypnosis, it's just as important to let her confirm that. And whether one calls it, sometimes it's referred to as a convincer, but really for our purpose, what this is a way that the client can validate their experience and know, oh, this is interesting, this is different, oh wow, this is hypnosis. And as they realize that, they go even deeper.
It is, because hypnosis, it's so different than what you think it's going to be. So I think it's so meaningful to be able to, it's not just for the therapist, but it's also for the client to realize that they are in hypnosis. And it's a part of which Cecilia also just described beautifully with the steel arm, that she could really literally not move her arm. And it was nothing holding it. It was nothing there. It was that selective thinking, and it was such a focal point. And that's what selective thinking is.
Very much.
And for her, that was it. Oh, well, this is different.
Right. And you could hear by the quality of her account and her experience how surprising that was, and how much she enjoyed it. And that means that once she's experienced that, she's going to go even deeper in hypnosis. And the next suggestion, she will be able to receive it even more meaningfully. So, yes, that the arm catalepsy, or the steel arm, was a beautiful one for her. Yeah.
Psychotherapy is not only a profession, it's a state of being. And for that, it requires continuous learning, training, and refining your skills. If you would like to become better in your role as a psychotherapist, come and join Dr. Warwick Phipps for in-person training at Treatment Works Centre, where you will experience training like never before from a thought leader and expert in psychotherapy. If you would like some more information on our training or to book a training session, please visit the link in the description. And also, if you find these podcast episodes meaningful, please subscribe to the Art of Therapy. And I think just with observing it as well is just when her arm was pushed down, her whole body literally moved.
Yes, you could see that. There was that strong catalepsy, and you could see her whole body moving, which is it's really interesting. I mean, this is part of what is very profound in hypnosis, that the way we start responding, and because of our subconscious mind, and we've looked at that is partly responsible for the autonomic nervous system. There's so many seemingly involuntary processes or processes that we think are outside of awareness that generally are, but just start occurring in hypnosis. It's lovely to see.
It is lovely to see, yes. And I think what's something just else that I observed is just at the beginning part of the hypnosis as well is when you talk to her and asked her to when you open your eyes, she immediately just went for that.
Yes.
Yes.
It was a lovely quality of her hypnosis. As she went into hypnosis and just going deep in hypnosis, for some, there's a very literal quality that as they're going deeper in hypnosis, they respond to suggestions more and more directly. And yes, that was an indication there of just as it was said, she would react on it. And sometimes it can be quite unsettling for a therapist or hypnotherapist, thinking, well, I haven't said it yet, but her eyes are open. No, that's just an indication very often actually of the depth of hypnosis and the responsiveness. And it's just being able to recognize that. But as you say, walking with the client in a deeply person-centered way as they increasingly begin to register and experience this is hypnosis.
It is. It's just as she recognizes it, she could just go deeper and deeper. But she was already there. She was already in hypnosis, but it's just going deeper and deeper into it.
Yes, very much.
I think something else that but she mentioned it at the end as well, but we could also see is that her whole body actually leans to the one side. But it's amazing. It's leaning, but it's staying.
Indeed.
Yes.
There's such a profound physical relaxation hypnosis that someone doesn't have to hold or carry themselves in the usual way. And often they just go down, down, down. But they don't ever fall off that chair because as someone goes deep in hypnosis, there's increasing safety and comfort, and the subconscious mind just manages more and more, much out of one's awareness. So there's no falling off.
Yes. It is just you don't have to do as much. You can just be, but your subconscious mind is always there. It always monitors, always protects.
That's it, and that's what makes it so meaningful for therapeutic work, because very often we are wanting to learn things or experience things in the conscious state, but it's much more difficult to receive. But in the hypnosis state, and with that quality of relaxation, we're so responsive. We can learn, and it's a deep learning state, and a very meaningful one.
Can actually learn rapidly in hypnosis.
Yeah, that's one way of thinking about it, that it's a state that enables rapid learning. Yeah.
I think something else that really stood out for me is that it's not visible in the video, but when I observed at the end part of the hypnosis, you could actually see her one foot actually lifting up a little bit from the ground. Yes,
that was really something, and it takes a hypnotherapist who's very observant to start noticing, because that's very much what happened. Her foot began moving, lifting and moving. And in that typical subconscious, the way it's not, the person who's experiencing hypnosis has no awareness of it. It's not in any way voluntary. It's another part of their system that's responding. And it's often known as ideomotor movement. And it's as someone goes deep and deep into hypnosis, there's possibility for more and more ideomotor, and that just showed up very spontaneously there. Beautiful. And again, it qualifies, or just it was part of a deeper and deeper state of hypnosis.
Can actually just with that, it's just that it's the ideomotor movement. It just shows the deepness of the hypnosis.
Yes.
And when a therapist can know it and they can recognize it, you really know that a client is in deep hypnosis.
Yes. And the importance of that is often for therapeutic purposes, just being able to recognize how deeply the client is in hypnosis, and when you've given them an opportunity, the client, to validate for themselves, then you know they're going to be able to receive the therapeutic suggestions, the suggestions they really need and want to hear. They're going to receive it with the same strength, the same quality. And that's really exciting.
You know that they're really ready for that and that they can really take it in.
Yes. And that's why if we just return and look and just note what part of that hypnosis induction and then the hypnosis itself, there were actually 4 types or 4 ways that she could validate, very often known as convinces, but for our purposes, ways of validating, for her to validate the trance experience. So there were 2 given to her in hypnosis, one being the eye catalepsy, and you saw that beautifully sharp. And then the second was the steel arm, the arm catalepsy. Now those were ways, once she could experience, she could validate the hypnosis state. And then she was given 2 more suggestions, but these are post-hypnotic. They're suggestions that will only come into effect once she's emerged. And that was the time distortion. Again, I just really want to credit here Calvin Banyan, Gerald Kein, because it was just this thinking that not only give the validation in the hypnosis, what about when someone emerges? They also need to validate. And so time distortion is a lovely one, where she was really surprised at a term. She thought it was 10 minutes, but it was basically double that. It was 19 and a half minutes, just short of 20. So you could see the surprise. And that often is so confirming for someone when they have an experience. It's like, wow. And you could see there was an initial disbelief, but the surprise and how validating that is. And then the other post-hypnotic convince or validation was tied therapeutically, that she had said that black was a favorite color. We all have our favorite colors, and that she would be able to see that in ways that she hadn't noticed before over the next few days. And note the feeling of relaxation and the increasing self-confidence. And that is, again, really validating for someone, because as they see the color, they experience whatever the therapeutic suggestion was. And that becomes another way of validating the experience. So, yeah, it's just so important that someone can validate in various ways their experience of hypnosis.
It is because hypnosis, it's so different than what the movies show and what people always know about. To be able to really to have those convinces, it's so meaningful for someone, both in hypnosis, but then also post-hypnotic suggestions. And it's from own experience when I experienced hypnosis, is to see that color after a session. It's just like, wow, it really is amazing. And then there's
very
no
striking.
doubt. It is, yes. And it's just there. It's just so organic. Yes.
Indeed. And that immediately is part of that validation. No one's telling you, just know it.
You just know it.
Yeah.
And I think with observing Cecilia just after she emerged, just how relaxed she was and how much she actually enjoyed that experience.
Yes. That was so evident. She was profoundly relaxed. Her comfort, how she was able to talk about her experience, her confidence. You can see the impact there, how therapeutic it is. What I also think is important is just when we look at how did she emerge, the importance of health and wellness suggestions. This was another contribution of Elman. Not only had he had a remarkable ability to facilitate hypnosis rapidly and with depth, but he understood that because it's a state of mind that one can go into so quickly, and the depth of hypnosis and the degree of selective thinking that can occur with a bypass, then the importance of the emergence and wellness suggestions. And so the principle there is really emerging someone very systematically with lots of wellness suggestions. And then even when Cecilia opened her eyes, there's still a carryover. She's actually still in hypnosis. And it's so important then to reinforce the wellness suggestions so that she experiences it and can express it. And that's important.
It is really, it's therapist part is really walking with the client all the way through.
Yes.
From the pre-hypnosis to the hypnosis to the emergence, and even in afterwards as well. Of really walking next to them and helping with that selective thinking.
That's so important because it's a process. And one goes in with certain ideas, certain thoughts, and at times misunderstanding, misconceptions. But yes, working that through, and then the induction itself. And, you know, part of what was utilized there is, again, Elman had discovered rapid hypnosis. When I say discovered, there were others who've experienced it and would facilitate, but he understood part of the mechanism, which was repeated induction. And so through repeated induction, and very rapidly a client is entering a deep hypnotic state. And it's so important then to recognize the depth of hypnosis. And here it was consistent with somnambulism. And that is really defined in different ways, but Elman referred to it as both physical and mental relaxation. And usually with a quality of some amnesia, either by suggestion or that it just happens automatically. And so the moment one is in a somnambulistic state, that's very deep hypnosis. It's very, the challenge is seeing how quickly it happens.
Yes, yeah.
But it happens very quickly.
I think there's so much depth in hypnosis and really understanding it even more. And just takes me back to the training that I had with you on hypnosis and the various different levels of training on hypnosis.
Yeah.
There's so much depth in this. And I think to be able to explore this in a podcast form, it really creates just a perspective on it. But there's so much more to it.
Oh, yes, that's right.
So I think it's the first part of really having understand what is hypnosis, and then seeing it and being able to discuss the process and unpacking that as well.
Yes.
But also having a look, and maybe we can pause it for the next episode of. But okay, what next? How can therapists really utilize this in hypnosis, and what is how can it be applied to help clients?
I think it'll be really valuable, and perhaps just before we go there, just to note too that just as you say, it's a deeply person-centered a process where one is walking with someone with some of their thoughts, their ideas, even some of their fears, then entering the hypnotic state, assisting them in this deep state, and then a very meaningful emergence with wellness, and then the post-hypnotic, enabling them and facilitating them, talking, sharing about their experience, but realizing that they're still in part in hypnosis. I mean, that's a really important and a continuous process. The other thing I'd just like to note is that in order for that to occur, there are three conditions in hypnosis. And the first one is generally speaking consent. One has to want hypnosis. Of course, there's surprise approaches, and that's something else. But for the most part, for hypnosis to be meaningful, there has to be consent. Someone has to want to experience. For the most part, you can't hypnotize someone who doesn't want it. So there needs to be consent. And there needs to then be really meaningful communication to be able to talk about it, and to facilitate some meaningful communication, and then freedom of fear. That really is key. And freedom from fear doesn't mean it's absolute 100. No, one can be a little bit scared or a little bit fearful, but be in hypnosis. But again, it's helping someone to work through that fear, having a corrective. And to the degree that they are more and more comfortable, the deeper they experience that hypnosis. So it just happens so quickly. But those are, I think, really important. And when we then consider the application of it, that's key, because someone has really wanted to experience hypnosis and they've been able to talk about it in a meaningful way, and they've experienced it as without any significant fear or anything that gets in the way, or even if there is, they can learn to work through it. But now, wow, as they experience hypnosis, the possibility for application and therapy, that's really exciting.
It really is exciting, because it opens up so many possibilities,
Yes.
and the rapid and quick way that it can help, actually.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm really looking forward to looking at the application then in the next episode.
Yes, I share that. Yes.
Thank you for joining us on the Art of Therapy. If you found this episode meaningful, or if it expanded your knowledge, we would love to hear from you in the comments section. We are looking forward to continuing this journey with you. Until our next episode.